Hello, everybody, and make sure that you walk with rhythm. Today, I have for you the first book in the prequel series Houses of Dune, starting with House Atreides, Book 1, which takes place about 30 to 40 years before the events of the original novel. This, of course, again, is part of the expanded universe of Dune, because Frank Herbert wrote about 6 books in his Dune universe. He unfortunately passed away and was unable to conclude his trilogy. Brian Herbert's son talks about in the acknowledgments of this book how he most certainly wanted to make a finale for his father, but he didn't want to do that alone, and he wanted to find people who could, find someone that would help him make that stuff come to life, which he eventually settled on Kevin J. Anderson when he saw the enthusiasm that Kevin J. Anderson exhumed for the series. And originally they wanted to make that conclusion, but they didn't do that to start off. Instead, they thought about doing stuff 10,000 years before the events of the Dune novel, focusing on the Butlerian Jihad, which I've already reviewed. But they also didn't decide to do that first. So what they actually did instead was they started with something a little bit more safe, a little bit more tame, which was the Houses trilogy, which dealt with earlier versions of characters we know and love from the original novels. So later on, they would get a bit more ambitious. They would then make, I think, the Butlerian Jihad trilogy. They would then go and make the finale to the original Dune universe, after the last book that Frank Herbert wrote. And then they make the Schools of Dune trilogy, which dealt with the aftermath of the events of the Butlerian Jihad. And then they also wrote a recent trilogy which takes place like a year before the movies, and I don't know if that's going to be good. We'll see. But that's pretty much their catalog. But this was the first thing that Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert worked on together, which is why I thought I would mention it, because of course I've already read the Schools of Dune trilogy, and I've already read the Butlerian Jihad trilogy, or the Legends of Dune trilogy by them, and I thought those were both outstanding and really good. I personally really think they're really good additions to the Dune universe, and I think, those diehard fans that say anything that Kevin Janderson and Brian Herbert touched in the Dune franchise is garbage is stupid, because I think they did great work. This is probably their safest work, though, because it was their first work, and, they didn't want to piss off people, so this is the safest trilogy they made. That being said, we deal with several characters in this book, a little bit too much, I might say. We deal with, of course, a young Leto Atreides. He starts out about 15 here. I think by the end of it he's 16, but this is a young Leto Atreides. We also get to see a lot of Paulus Atreides, his father, which Paulus, his son, ends up being named Paul. You see that? And then Paul will go on to name his son Leto. But yeah, Paulus is really great. It's funny, when I read it, I gave Paulus kind of... there was audiobooks of, for those who know, of the Star Wars Expanded Universe, there's audiobooks abridged awfully, but there's audiobooks for the X-Wing books. And there's this Booster Tarek, who's a character in the X-Wing novels. He talks kind of like this, and he's like, da-da-da! And I kind of gave a similar vibe to Paulus Atreides. But Paulus Atreides is a great character. We get to learn a lot more about, like, Caladan, the place where Leto lives, and being the Duke of that place, and the bullfighting that was always mentioned with Leto's father. We also get to see a young and fit Baron Harkonnen. He's not fat in this book. We actually get an explanation for that in this book, which I'll get into in spoilers. It's a little unnecessary, but I don't mind it. We get a lot more with the Bene Gesserit, saying what they're trying to do is we're getting ever closer to the it's so hard for me to say. The the frickin' Messiah. It's hard for me to pronounce it, I'm sorry. But the Haderach, Kiswath Haderach, whatever the fudge you call that. But they're getting ever closer to that, so we're seeing stuff with that. We're seeing a family that we don't really see in the original novel, so I'm assuming bad stuff happens to them. But they're running around. We get a lot with the Tleilaxu, which I imagine, I haven't actually read the books that take place after the original Dune novel, but I know about the Gulas and stuff like that, and I know that the Tleilaxu are a big part of that. So it's interesting that we get a lot more of them here than we did in the past. And we deal with a lot of different stuff in this book. We also do with Pardant Kynes, the father to Liet Kynes from the original Dune novel. And that's probably, for me, the most boring part of the book. But the rest of it was astounding. Like, we get a lot of stuff with Shaddam, because Shaddam's not the Emperor in the beginning of this book. It is his father, Elrond. So we get to see a lot of Elrond and Shaddam, with Fenring trying to rise to power. We see the same thing with, Baron Harkonnen and dealing with Arrakis and everything. Shaddam is also working on this artificial spice with the Tlaxu, or trying to make this a thing. Or, sorry, Elrond is, and Shaddam kind of follows suit in that. But it's interesting because obviously this artificial spice isn't a thing by the original Dune novel, so something's going to happen next year that makes that not possible. But it's interesting to see because Elrond doesn't want to rely on House Harkonnen. He wants to be, the ultimate power source in the galaxy and doesn't want to have to rely on the other houses anymore. So he's trying to play this grand game. It obviously won't work out in the long run. Elrond's now dead, and Shaddam rises as emperor. But it'll be interesting to see where that all leads. And I really enjoyed how political this book really gets. And in this book, we do see the death of Paulus Atreides. I would have wished that would have happened in the second book. But that being said, the whole last 100 to 200 pages of this book deal with this trial of Leto Atreides, as one of the things that the Baron decides to do is to frame House Atreides for attacking the Tlaxu, so that way the Tlaxu, can get mad at House Atreides and demand blood. It's also a thing of the Harkonnens learn about what Shaddam and Elrond were trying to do, which is to basically cut them out of the business so that they can become bankrupt and useless within their society. Because their whole thing is they run Arrakis, they run the spice, which gives them an edge over the Emperor, but the Emperor wants to take that power away from them. So it's plots within plots within plots, because the Harkonnens are well, we hate the Atreides, we got this long-standing feud with them. Not only can we get rid of Atreides because we hate them, family feuds, we could also stop Shaddam. So it's this whole multi-layered thing. But I really enjoyed this first book. Are you going to get the Frank Herbert levels of philosophy and all this stuff? No. But you will get a very fun tale with characters set before the original Dune novel. And if you love Leto Atreides like I do, I think they absolutely nail Leto Atreides. Even in an early version of him, you could see what he grows into be. And the fact that, I get to have basically 6 more books with Leto Atreides before his death in the original novel. Spoilers if you haven't read the original novel, but why are you watching this then? But I'm not spoiling anything too big for this book. But it's really good because I really love his character. So the fact that I get to spend more time with him before his ultimate demise is really great to me. And I really enjoyed his character in this. I enjoyed all the characters in this, even Pardon Kynes. I just happen to find his section the most boring. Also, we get a little slice of Duncan Idaho in here because he's a slave to the Harkonnens in this book. So, and I won't say too much more about his backstory there, but he's 8 years old in this book. And, the stuff that he goes through is insane. And his sections are one of my favorite sections of the book. Duncan Idaho is one of the best characters, and obviously Frank Herbert agreed too, because, I know stuff. Duncan keeps finding his way back, so, that's really cool. But overall, I think this is a great addition to the franchise. And I do think absolutely that it is worth your time if you are a Dune fan. It doesn't really tread on any toes like other books do. They get a bit more ambitious with the, Butlerian Jihad stuff. And I haven't read the finale to the Dune universe that they wrote, but I know that's very controversial. But as for this was played very safe, and it just gives more time with our characters, and I think it's great. And I'm excited to see what this new interesting plot points they brought up where it will come along in the future. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you don't want spoilers, now's the time to go. If you don't care about spoilers, stick around. What have I not mentioned? So, Duncan's family tragedy. Now that we're on the time of spoilers, the fact that the Atreides, not the Atreides, the Harkonnens shoot, literally, this is Batman origin story levels of, except that they shoot Duncan's father and mother right in front of him. It's awful. This kid, has been a slave his whole life. He's been in these, games that Raban likes to play where he chases down his prey. It's awful. So the fierce... But as I was saying, sorry about that. Yeah, seeing that happen to Duncan was crazy. We also have... uh, Paul's grandfather, Paulus Atreides, has this whole speech about respect, about like if you're going to be a ruler, you need to understand your citizens. You can't be, like other rulers who they don't even consider the citizens. You need to like he would work with the citizens, like do the hard labor, so he could understand them, so he could be more compassionate and more better leader. I thought that was great. Um, Shaddam is at the beginning of this book rather content with his position in life, but it's Fenring that drives him to become emperor, and they make a whole plot to destroy Elrond. And Fenring can be a little scary, I have to say. This book did a good job of making Fenring rather scary. I of course made Fenring seem like even though I think in the Lynch film and the Peteor, um, um, Baron's Mentat was played by I think Chucky, Brad Dourif, but I imagine Fenring more as Brad Dourif here. Um, One of the more interesting parts of this book is that Mohim, Mother Mohim, wants the Baron's seed. Um, we also get to see more of his sexuality here, being his gay pedo-ness, because he has no interest in having sex with Mother Mohim, but, Mother Mohim has some dirt on him, so he capitulates into doing it. But her child ends up being deformed, so they end up having to do it again. But I'll get into that in a little bit. The synthetic spice angle is really interesting, and I'm excited to see where the future books go with that. Um, After everything that goes on with Leto on IX and the revolt that happens, the Zixian children end up having to live with the Atreides. Um, Also, Duncan leaves the Harkonnen Gidi Prime and gets to go meet up with Paulus Atreides and Leto Atreides, which is going to begin this friendship, this long-standing devotion. Because not only does he have all this hatred for the Harkonnens, but he grows to really care about um, the Atreides, and we get to start to see that here, which is great. So the Bene Gesserit tells the Baron something went wrong. We need you one more time. The Baron capitulates, but he immobilizes Mother Mohim and rapes her and gives her a child. He doesn't enjoy it, or actually he enjoys it because he's making her do this against her will, or at least not in the way that she would have preferred. Now, while she's being raped, and this is the unnecessary part, but is perfectly in line with the Baron's character, is that while she's being raped, Mother Mohim is able to use her Bene Gesserit abilities to alter chemicals within um, the Baron's body. Now, in this book, it is quite clear that the Baron is rather prideful of his body and is able to be lustful with any man he wants with his perfect body. He is very proud of his physical form. So Mohim decides, instead of killing him, the thing that will hurt him the most is removing that pride. So she enacts a slow-acting disease that won't kill him, but it will slowly over time make him more unable to move about and make him fat and obese. Take away everything he takes pride in of himself. Now, is it unnecessary? The original books clearly seem to imply, at least, that he was just lazy, and off of his power and his wealth, he got fat and lazy. But at the same time, we know the Baron is an absolutely despicable human being. So the fact that in this story he would do something like that to Mother Mohim is perfectly in character for him. Absolutely in character for him. And the fact that, Mother Mohim is not a good person either, but the fact that she's able to get revenge on him in that way, I think absolutely fits perfectly well with the Baron's character. And I think actually makes the fact that he's so obese and has to be on these suspensors and in the original Dune novel brings more weight to that fact. More weight to that fact. But I actually really like this change. It is unnecessary, I won't lie to you. But it is an interesting way of explaining that. And over time that I've had more time to think about it, I like that decision. Um, And with all, like, poetry, it rhymes. Paulus Atreides and Elrond die around the same time because of the same thing earlier on. Again, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening in this book. Shaddam, with the help of Fenring, puts a poison into um, Elrond's favorite wine. Like, they do it every time he drinks wine, but it's like hardly noticeable. So every time he drinks wine, and he drinks it a lot because it's his favorite thing, he's slowly gonna die faster. So in the next like year, he ends up dying. But when he finally dies and Shaddam takes the reign of the Emperor of the Known Universe, Paulus Atreides, due to the Harkonnens, they put a... Because there's like this spear that Paulus uses that kind of like dulls the bull and kind of makes it more tired as they're fighting it. But they put some drugs into the bull's system that make it so it won't get tired, while Paulus will, because he's only human. And so through that act, he does eventually succumb and dies to a bull. Which, right when Shaddam becomes crowned Emperor of the Known Universe, Leto Atreides, way earlier than he ever expected, becomes Duke Leto Atreides of Caladan. And so that, I thought that was really good. And so then you get this whole section of the book where we do with Leto being on trial for the death of the Talaxu. And this whole section was probably my most interested part. Like, this whole section was great. I absolutely loved it and loved how it resolved with Shaddam thinking that Atreides knows about his involvement with the Talaxu, which Leto doesn't actually know anything about that. But since Shaddam can't, if it comes out that he's been doing this and his father's been doing this, there might be a revolt among all the houses, and then his power will diminish. So that can't be let out. So he saves Leto Atreides. But I mean, in public opinion, a lot of people still think he did it. It's just that by the Emperor of the Known Universe, he's been pardoned from it. So the next book, I assume, will be about, clearing Leto's actual, honor and name. We also deal with some cloaking tech. I don't know a lot about the future books. I don't imagine this is a contradiction. Bigger Dune fans could let me know. But there is some experimental cloaking technology, because the thing here is that and I'm assuming it will get broken at some point too. It won't be able to be used. I don't know. But the Harkonnens have this. And so they have a cloaked ship that goes and blows up a Talaxu ship, so that way Leto can be blamed for it, and that's what makes the whole trial happen. But it actually only helps Leto in the end, with the help of the Emperor and everything, because now he's at a higher status than he's ever been before. But of course, like I said, a lot of public opinion is like, yeah, sure, but you still did it, But also, a lot of people get respect to Leto for that, because nobody likes the Talaxu. They're all very bigoted and prejudiced against them, so it's like, big balls on you, kid. Even though he didn't do it, but he wants to clear his name because he doesn't want to be dishonorable. Also, this child that came from the rape of Mother Mohim is Jessica. Now, of course, Jessica would never be told of her origin anyway, because none of the Bene Gesserit are really told who their fathers are. They're just born from one of the, mothers. So that's not necessarily a contradiction that, like, Jessica doesn't know about that, because I don't think any of the Bene Gesserit really know about their birth father, right? Because they're just kind of, their whole organization, they just are born into this society. But we get the birth of Jessica here. I imagine she won't be important at all until like the third book, because there's like a 16-year gap between her and Leto, and I imagine there'll be a big time jump moving forward. So, but that was really interesting. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I do think it is heavily, heavily, heavily worth your time. I'm so excited to read House Harkonnen and continue to see what this prequel series has in store for us. So until next time, guys, make sure you walk with rhythm, or the worm will be after you. Bye-bye.